Welcome to episode 10 of The Arc-Aholics. This podcast is a collection of passionate gamers talking about Arc Raiders and various related topics. The thumbnail art was made possible by ThatARCGuy. His links will be in the description below. Just before we get started, here's a quick shout out to the channel supporters. These absolute legends help make this kind of content possible. And a special shout out to the Florida Man Alligator tiered supporter, The Tranimal. Check out the links below if you're curious on how to support the channel. With that out of the way, let's get rolling. Welcome to the Arc-Aholics. All right, guys, I'm your host today. I'm Gecko. I look crazy, I know. I'm going to scare all the children in the room, so just a fair warning. I'm the host for today of the Gecko of the Arc-Aholics. With me today, I have the infamous Rockhoundblack.
Great to be here, and for us to both be on camera for the 10th episode. So I guess congratulations on making it to the 10th episode.
For sure, man. I think it's important, and the 10th episode is a big thing. I think everyone's kind of excited. We have a fantastic comment section, an audience that's really enthusiastic about it. I get at least one or two comments almost every single video of just, man, you're holding it together for me. I'm listening to it on my commute, or I'm listening to it doing this, and it's just good to have something that's consistent, and people are just happy to hear passionate gamers talk about the game that they're passionate about. And so, to me, that feels really great. I feel like I normally would go run in circles if I didn't have something to kind of just ooze all my passion into. Right? That sounded really wrong. Crap. That's going to be memorialized right there.
They get the picture. They know what you mean.
Oh, I'm sure they know what I mean. They don't care though. So yeah. So today we got a special episode since it is episode 10. What I wanted to do is just focus on the game itself. The reason why it's important, we've been talking a lot about market conditions lately because, well, recent events have kind of forced our hand in that regard. I think because of Battlefield and all that kind of good jazz, and that I like to talk about Arc Raiders, and I know the best thing would be just play Arc Raiders. That's the biggest problem with Arc Raiders right now, is that we can't play it. That's just really. And I feel like today is a great episode to focus on that because it is the 10th episode, and focus on what we believe makes Arc Raiders special for each of us. And so we have that on the docket, as well as the recent information jumps we've had. We have two, as you noted, within the span of a week or two, or depends on how you measure that. We have the Raiders little area, right? We'll go into that, and then also the concept art, the art channel of the Discord, right? And so, just going into that, which one do you think we want to tackle first?
I think maybe we talk about the game. Let's dive into that. I think
the game, yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. So let's start that off. I think which would you like to go first?
Sure. I think when you actually distill it down to its absolute core, Arc Raiders, the thing that really appeals about the game is that it's set in a tragedy, and some of the greatest stories in humanity are tragedies, right? Right, yep. From back in, the Greek authors and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
And so we've got a planet that has suffered environmental catastrophe. A whole bunch of humans have left a bunch behind, so that's tragic as well. And then now you've got a small community trying to find their way and fight amongst themselves. Which again is kind of a bit of a tragedy. So the story for Arc Raiders is actually super great setting. And I think for me, that's actually one of the things that appeals most about it.
That reminds me of Constantine. You're familiar with the movie Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, I haven't seen it for a long time. But
the angel Gabriel, in their twisted sense, basically said they wanted to bring hell on earth in order to bring the nobleness out of human beings, because the more horrific that they face, more horrors that they face, the more noble they become. And so in a lot of ways, when you point out the fact there's so many tragedies involved, that opens the door for lots of possibilities for the human condition in terms of how that plays out. So that's what it reminded me of when you just said that.
Yeah. And then you can immerse yourself into that story, right? So even though it's a tragedy, the fact that it's a game is you can have these amazing fun moments that are little slices of life within that tragedy.
Right.
I think it's got a, the whole package of its story is something that I'm really looking forward to seeing unraveling and telling us more as we go along. That's probably one of the things I'm most looking forward to about it, aside from actually just playing the game.
Right. And it's interesting that you point out that whole slice of life factor, because this game is a small slice of life, because I have often pointed out, because anyone who's played an extraction game where there's proximity check, i.e. all of them except for Marathon, until we see it later. But I've always kind of stated that the pixels you have in game, they come and go. Those are fake. Like at the end of the day, they're just pixels. They're fake. What you do and who you are is very real. And so for me, I'd rather get shot in the back from someone betraying me and losing pixels over it than me in my psyche doing what it takes to betray someone, shoot them in the back. Because that's real. Right? I know I'm moralizing, and I know there's gonna be some people who are gonna have issues with that, but to me, I feel like that's your character, that you're compromising for pixels, which makes it that much worse, in my opinion. But and some people they'll play fun with it. They're like, "Oh, I'll play the dark side and do things I normally wouldn't do." But I'm like, they're in you. That's real, right?
Yeah, I think for some people, maybe that escape of playing a role that isn't them, sort of that role playing aspect can be a big part of it as well. And there's the opportunity for that. I kind of feel like Arc Raiders isn't going to have that much betrayal in it, though. Like, I feel like it's more going to be about these bonding moments with your buddies. When you've, as a squad, when you've managed to survive 2 other squads trying to take you out and you come away from it with a bunch of loot, that those moments are the ones that you'll look back on from the day's play and go, wow, that was pretty cool.
Right. I can still remember raids from like several years ago playing the Cycle Frontier because of just epic moments because of just like that. And I think it's interesting you say that, because I recently had a discussion in our Discord, and when someone said Arc Raiders is the friendliest extraction shooter, and I thought I laughed pretty hard at that, because that's a really low bar, right? That's a really low bar, right? That's still awfully hostile at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think because of the setting and because of other factors that we can get into, I think he's right. I think he actually is right in terms of is going to be the friendliest extraction shooter. Does that mean it's not going to be kill on sight the vast majority of times? No, it's going to be kill on sight the vast majority of time, just because of the nature of how extraction shooters work. And so
I think it's going to carry those moments where there's a lot of laughs in it as well, which from other, like playing Escape from Tarkov, I don't remember laughing too much while I've been playing that, but
right.
Certainly Arc Raiders, there's a lighthearted aspect to it, set in a really grounded environment and story.
For sure. And I think it's interesting, that's your answer in terms of what makes it special to you in terms of the settings. Is like, in mine is actually the exact same thing, but for vastly different reasons, right? Like for me, the fact that it's set in a sci-fi universe brings with it a ton of gameplay potential, which is my aspect of it. Whereas sense that if you're grounded in reality, like really grounded in reality, like modern day shooters type thing, you have a very limited amount of space to pull levers into what you can change, right? And so you can't exactly say, well, the M4 is doing way too much damage, let me just go ahead and change the kind of bullet it shoots. Can't really do that, right? You can't really, you can't do it in real life. That's a whole other bag of worms, like in the game. But it's just one of those things where, because it's sci-fi, you're allowed to then go, hey, you know what? You're right. The heavy shield really is too strong. I'm going to go ahead and nerf that. Or hey, the safe pocket is entirely too easy to hide things like snap hooks, hatch keys, things of that nature. Let's go ahead and change that. Because this is a sci-fi universe. You're allowed to have that creativity, right? And so to me, that opens a ton of possibilities for the gameplay.
Yeah. And I feel like for Embark Studios, that when they made the finals, they wanted to make a game where they could just say yes most of the time to any idea that was put forward.
Right. Send it.
All right. There were so few rules, exactly. And Arc Raiders I feel like it's only one step away from that. It's still set in an environment that's going to have some constraints around it, but that sci-fi aspect does give it a lot of flexibility, which you just don't get in, very like that military niche, especially. And it's kind of interesting that they're the first to sort of, I guess Hunt Showdown gives you
And the Cycle Frontier.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of military ones, right? There's a lot of people that are just stuck to that niche, and I guess they know there's a market for that. But it's nice to see ones that step outside it.
I think it's not necessarily because they went that way. I think because it was a little bit of a trap set by Tarkov's success, and I think a lot of developers decided, and because of I think the bulk of the people who play extraction shooters come from a Tarkov background. A lot of the feedback you're going to get is going to get colorized by that, and so a lot of times you're going to have developers are going to come in and going to go, cool, I'm going to make an extraction shooter. Basically, it has to be like Tarkov, otherwise it won't succeed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have the opposite end of the equation where developers came in and tried to make an extraction shooter just by adding the extraction element into it. We got Hawked, we got Hyenas for like a little bit. We have, Steel Hunters. Like you have games that are effectively just BRs that happen to have an extract mechanic. And that was the other end of that spectrum, right? I feel like there's two other ones that really found their way of not doing a Tarkov-esque game type of extraction shooter prior to Arc Raiders was the Cycle Frontier and Hunt. And I feel like those games have their own particular issues. Well, in the same case of Cycle Frontier, it no longer exists. But Hunt Showdown, I feel like, and I've talked about this before, where I feel like it's the most casual a extraction shooter can possibly be, because to me, in my opinion, how casual, how hardcore a game isn't necessarily determined just by the time to kill. It's determined by how hard it is to replace the loot you just lost, right? And so with Tarkov, you're talking about some cases like days, weeks, or whatever, right? Meanwhile, Hunt Showdown, a few minutes tops, right? And so I feel like there's not really a lot in the middle, right? And I feel like some games have done that with like, ABI and Delta Force, but in the way they play, it's very similar to Tarkov in a lot of ways. There's not really a lot of imaginative ways they can pull levers that way. Whereas I feel like Arc Raiders does that by keeping things both simple in where they don't need to be complex, and then complex where they need to be a little more in depth. Like in terms of like the recent video that I made in regards to its free loadouts, there's a lot of thought that went into this very simple mechanic, but I think that's why it's successful. What's going to be successful?
Yeah, and I think these things kind of are symptoms of the experience that the developers at Embark Studios have. You were talking before about studios not wanting to step outside that military niche of the Tarkov sort of thing, and I could be wrong, but maybe it speaks to those other studios just not backing themselves and not having the experience to go, hey, we can make whatever we want and we know how to make it good. And I kind of feel like Embark Studios, because of that huge amount of experience they come into being a studio with, I think that they can back themselves a bit more, and they know they can do it properly.
And one other factor as well is that to give these devs some credit, in the sense that not just Embark, but anybody else who kind of jumped into it and either didn't succeed or ended up making a Tarkov clone, to some credit, is that the extraction shooter genre has been really hard to nail down, right? In terms of what makes it appealing. I think because of those examples that I gave earlier, in terms of like just basically being BRs that have extraction mechanics, it's really hard to nail down exactly how to make a proper extraction shooter, because it's counterintuitive to what a normal gaming experience delivers. The dopamine hits, the power fantasy. It's the exact opposite, right? And so I feel like it's not these developers' fault necessarily, but at the same time, I feel like trying to stay too close to Tarkov, and I think I said this before when the game Gray Zone Warfare was coming out, I feel like making an extraction game as close to Tarkov as you possibly can, it's probably more efficient to set a barrel of money on fire and just move on. Because you're not the game. Here's the thing: say what you want about the game. The game has an 8-year run head start on you when it comes to content, just point blank, right? And in terms of an extraction shooter content, that's your lifeblood in terms of how long you can physically play that game for like one wipe, and that's a lot. That's 8 years of extra content they have on you. So even if you started if you came out today, everything was better, graphics, player base, optimization, you can literally just tell you off the list, right? If you can make a game that's completely better than it in every single way, but you start from scratch in terms of content, you're still losing, right? And I feel like too many companies were trying to do that and then found out later they have to differentiate themselves in a different way, right? So like Gray Zone Warfare, it's moving into more MMO-ish type thing, which is a great thing for it because it's going to differentiate itself, right? Whether or not there's a market for that, I don't know, but hopefully, I can only hope they'll be successful to give people more options to play games that way. But for Arc Raiders, I feel like the reason why I fell in love with this game is because it was as closest to the things that I liked about Cycle Frontier, while also staying away the things that I didn't like about Cycle Frontier, right? And I feel like I said before, in terms of there's being a casual hunt showdown, loot's very easy to get back, and then a Tarkov, routes really hard to get to. There's this huge gap in the middle that's just not being served. And I feel like Arc Raiders is just going to plop down and just take it all.
Yeah. I think they've positioned themselves super well. And like you say, extraction shooters at their heart are brutal, right? If you think a game like DayZ, you can die in that game with no warning whatsoever. You just get headshot from somewhere and you don't even know who did it, right? But you might have spent 2 hours roaming around the countryside, kind of enjoying that aspect of the game, and then flip to the other end and something like Battlefield. Well, you just you got 2 minutes per life, and you might die quickly, but it doesn't really matter because you're back in within 15 seconds or so. Right. And that extraction shooters are right in the zone where it's so brutal because you might play for 20 minutes and then you lose everything. And I think Embark have figured out a way to make a brutal and highly accessible game. Right. And highly appealing, and that is very good.
Right. And one of the things that I didn't particularly like about Cycle Frontier, because I felt like as I'm getting older, I think it's more important to understand. One of the lessons that I've learned as getting older playing games is not only to understand what games you like, but understanding why you like them. Because that allows you to then be very accurate when you pick games to play for the first time. Like, hey, I'm going to play this game, I'm going to play that game. And you're like, oh, this game's, not what I thought it was going to be. But if you understand yourself in terms of what specifically you like and you don't like, you can navigate that with way more accuracy. So in the case of Cycle Frontier, I hated getting one popped out of nowhere. Like, just instantly gibbed, bow, and just like, I lost all my stuff. And I had no chance to just try to mitigate that in some way. Right now, the way the game played out, if the person shoots first and they're doing damage to you first, there's a high probability that you're going to lose that fight anyways, right? But at least you have a shot. You have a cool, I'm going to dodge real quick, mitigate some of that damage, and then while they're reloading, I'm running, I'm healing, I'm not instantly dead, right? Whereas I feel like that doesn't really happen in a lot of the milsim extraction shooters that occur out there, right? And it doesn't bother me in Hunt so much because everything's so easy come, easy go in that game. So it's just, that's the difference. I feel like Arc Raiders, though, lands in that sweet spot where, like, if you're landing your shots and someone's being careless enough to walk right up in your kill zone and you are able to land all your shots and they're able to just let you continue to land all your shots, they needed to get killed. Like, they needed that lesson, right? They absolutely need that lesson. Whereas if you just shoot someone, boom, and they instantly just dodge right into cover, all right, it's going to be a fight, which I enjoy. It's that cat and mouse, but it's not, yes, you have an advantage because you shot first, but it's not guaranteed, right? And I feel like it's a good sweet spot.
If you look at the games you played leading up to Arc, to learning about Arc Raiders, could you imagine back then that you wanted to play a game that was like this?
Yes. I think because with the Cycle Frontier, it was interesting to me because I played the game for the better part of a year, and that was my first extraction game. Before then, I looked at Hunt, I looked at Tarkov, I'm like, man, that's not for me, man. I ain't trying to do that, which is why I kind of sympathize a lot with the average gamer now, because who doesn't want to play that because they feel the same thing that I felt. So now I sympathize with that and I go, cool, well, let me tell you a different way of looking at it, because maybe you're just looking at Tarkov. Maybe you're just looking at ABI. You're not looking at all the other possibilities. And so for me, when the Cycle Frontier announced its shutdown, interesting enough, I stopped playing that game instantly. Like, it was just straight up cold turkey, even though I had months before the game's actually official shutdown, right? And I realized there's a reason for that, and I figured out that I was playing that game for at least 51% of its potential, and 49% for what it was, right? So the moment the potential was gone, because there's no future in the game, I saw very low motivation to play it anymore. Whereas,
Yeah, right.
and so when I finally got a chance to play Arc Raiders for the first time in 2023, I instantly saw potential. I instantly saw like, oh wait, this is getting all the things that the cycle did right, and none of the things the cycle got wrong. Oh man, we got a hit. We got a hit.
Yeah.
Real bad. And then I didn't see the game again for another year and a half, which was just absolutely fucking frustrating.
Huh.
So these kids
It's
talking
funny,
about like,
like,
oh, it's 4 months. It's 4 months. I got a year and a half, man. Sit down.
Now that we've been talking about it, you sort of asked me before what I like about the game. I've kind of realized, I sort of had this little epiphany that I started playing. The first shooter I played was Quake, right back in the 1990s.
Yeah.
And then I got into Battlefield, but what I've realized Arc Raiders does is, as a kid, like a little kid, I grew up in the New Zealand countryside, one of the most arid parts of New Zealand, right? And so the landscape is actually not that different from the landscape around the damn Battlegrounds map. It's very similar in some ways. And
minus the arcs, I assume.
Yeah, minus the arcs, that's right. Minus the shots over your head most of the time. There's people shooting rabbits out there.
Hey,
And we would go and wander in the countryside for like an entire afternoon. Me and my buddies would just, cruise around looking for things that we could find, old relics from the mining age and all that kind of thing.
Entertain yourself, my friend.
And I've just realized that childhood enjoyment of exploring the countryside and Battlefield and Quake, if you kind of mush those together, that's kind of what Arc Raiders is. It's actually satisfying this almost childhood exploration that I used to do. It's funny. I haven't thought about that until just now.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that's probably why I feel more attraction towards extraction games as opposed to, say, survival games. And I'm not sure if you feel this way. Maybe I can pick your brain on this one. Like I don't like survival games because you're never off. Like your base is always at risk. Your stuff is always at risk, and it always kind of feels like it's a game of who can be online the most. In a lot of ways. Whereas extraction is just like, I'm going to risk my stuff exactly in the proportion that I want for the exact time limit that is going to allow me. Yeah. Obviously, things happen. But it's like here to there and everything else back at the base. That's safe because I haven't chosen to risk it yet.
Yeah.
And I feel like that to me is significantly more casual friendly than, let's say, a Rust, for example. Or what's the other one? Arc, ironically. With a K.
Right. Yeah, gotcha.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it definitely has that ebb and flow, right? Especially when you're out of round, you kind of relax for a bit, you're chatting with your buddies about something else, and then you're back in. It's almost like coming back onto the field after the halftime break, You sort of and step up that awareness of what's going on around you. I like it. I think that definitely makes it very accessible compared to some of those survival games, which you were saying. I remember watching DayZ videos where there's clans that have a base, and there were guys that were doing the night shift to make sure that there was someone around the base. It's like, okay, you might be into that, but it's certainly not something I want to do.
I think that's probably where I started to step back from gaming a little bit than I used to. I used to basically. I used to help run a rather large clan in MechWarrior Online, and the way that game had a territorial type feel, it was basically done in like 8-hour increments, and so whoever won the most battles within that 8-hour increment won that planet. If you're doing the math there, that's 3 times a day, which means if you don't have people on at a certain time, the probability of you having to retake the same planet over and over again is pretty high. So at a certain point, we got cool. We have to have an EU division so that way we can have an actual, it just became like a lot of work, honestly, right? It's
that's right.
And I feel like
it's not accessible, right, when it becomes like that.
Especially when it requires like multiple 12-man teams, right? And it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed that particular camaraderie of it in terms of like going on, and at the time it was TeamSpeak, and getting on TeamSpeak and seeing like 5 channels full of 12 people each, just going drop after drop after drop, right? But my ass is old now, so I don't got that time or the mental. Like, I play games for fun, right? But I'm not so detached to the point where I'm not certain with words attached, but I'm not so pulled back from the point. Like, I like the competitiveness of it, and so I feel like an extraction game is ironically better for older gamers, And I think
Yeah, I
a lot
agree.
of times people make the opposite claim, like, oh man, I'm too old for this. I don't want to have to worry about my gear being lost to some sweat, this, that, and the other. I'm just like, brother, in this game, patience is a weapon. You got that in abundance, right? Your
Yeah,
ability to
and
plan,
awareness of what's going on, right? Being able to read the
read the room, read
not
the
only
area,
read the environment and how players are interacting with it as well.
right?
And you have the time to do it. You might get hit once, but most of the time you get an opportunity to retreat and recoup and come back from a different angle or whatever.
Right,
So
right,
yeah,
right. And so I find that
definitely.
interesting. That conversation is very interesting to me in the sense that when people talk about the demographic of people who are going to be playing extraction shooters, oftentimes I feel like people who don't play extraction shooters, who are older gamers, mischaracterize how they fit into a potential player for an extraction game because of that. In the sense that I have to remind them, like, no, in this the Cycle Frontier specifically, because there's no timer for the raids, you can literally stay in them as long as the server was up, which is 6 hours is max, right? I think the longest raid I ever had was like an hour plus. I think it was like I want to say maybe hour 10, hour 20 is probably the longest raid I ever had in that game. And yeah, patience can be a weapon. Like straight up, I'm gonna hold this position, and you know where I'm at. I know where you're at. I'm gonna hold the angle. So it's up to you if you want to go around or not. And
Yeah,
and if you
yeah.
hear them go around and move on, like cool, I'm gonna use that. And that, as an older player, you have that ability to do that. You're not forced to fight, though. I usually encourage people, hey, just learn how to fight because sometimes you can't avoid it. So, um, and I feel like there's an interesting place for Arc Raiders in that regard because it has this really fun, uh, gunslinger aspect to it in terms of how the combat plays out, but it doesn't take away from what I just said in terms of rewarding your patience, rewarding your planning, and rewarding your movement.
That's right. And then on the flip side of that, you've also got the extraction points and so on closing down as the raid comes
Mm-hmm.
towards an end, like clipping at your heels, going,
Right, planning
okay,
it out
you can do all this tactical stuff, but we're going to push you along and make you get moving at some point.
mm-hmm.
So
For sure.
yeah, I think it's a good balance.
Right, right. Hey, so there was a comment recently because we talked a lot about hatch keys on this show, and had a really great suggestion on one of the comments on one of the episodes, and I wanted to bring that to you to see what you thought about it. Right, so
Yeah, I'm interested to hear.
because most of the time because I so overthink these things, I've probably already thought of it. So I'm really excited when someone brings an idea that I haven't thought about, that I can actually like sink my teeth into.
Hmm.
And so this person came up with the idea is that the hatch key, in order to be activated, has to have power. But in order for you to have power, you have to go switch and actually activate the power node to actually activate it, right? And so, but that power node is not at the actual hatch itself. You still need a hatch key to open it, but you need to go somewhere else, and that somewhere else is going to be, at the very least, close to where, not close to where the hatch is at, but at least going to be closer to where people might be than where the hatch is. And so in the case
In an
of,
exposed position kind of thing.
well,
Yeah.
necessarily an exposed position, but at the very least, it's going to be closer. We're going to be more likely to run into somebody there. But also, you can add on to that, adding a audio trigger. So like, I'm going to open this up. I need my hatch key to start this process. And then there's an audio cue that's going to be pretty unique. So if someone's nearby and they hear that, it's not going to be like sirens blaring like a normal extract or anything like that. It can be like, boom, this is a audible thing that you can hear that someone is doing. So now, A, you know where they are. B, you know where they're going.
Yeah.
Right? So
Do you think it
now,
would make it? Do you think it would make it too much like a main extraction point though, with having that mechanic?
not
I mean,
necessarily.
that would.
You don't have to be. Doesn't have to be. You can hear it from across the map. Sound. It can be one of those. Hey, if you're in like a warehouse in Starport, and you're within that warehouse, you can hear it. Right? It doesn't have to be super, audible to half the map, but it could be one of those cases. You are running the risk. It is a added risk, and I feel like,
Right, like within 100 yards, sort of thing. You can.
Right?
Yeah,
It's not
it just
free.
adds a little more risk. I like that idea. I think that's it doesn't make it as free as it was previously. I think that's
Right.
good.
And the thing is, I think it's because it makes it not free, but not in a monetary sense, right? Because even good teams, even good trios that normally have little issues overcoming monetary obstacles, have to deal with this risk. So maybe not that well put together trio. They're like, we're kind of more casual, right? And then they hear that, and they are in the path of where that cue is coming from, and the hatch it's associated with. And you're, oh, we know where they're coming. Let's just lie in wait now. And now it's no longer free, right? And so I think that would, and because I think,
and in addition to that, it adds the other side, which is that when you trigger it, you know that you've also got to now approach with stealth, right? Which you didn't really have to before. You just turned up, because the chances of someone else using the same radar hatch was, pretty slim.
Correct, right? And so, what you could do, you can add a couple of, I don't know, like consoles. Like you can add a couple of consoles. It doesn't have to be a huge graphical thing, right? But it could be, a console on a wall somewhere at a particular point that goes, this is attached to this hatch. This is to swing power to this particular place. And graphically speaking, in terms of adding it to a map, it could be it doesn't necessarily have to be very large. You can do it that way, and who knows, you can play with it a little bit. It doesn't necessarily have to be static. It can be like, I'm adding power to the hatch keys in the area, right? Like one or two of them. So it's not guaranteed to have one. You could just have it one. You could have it be super risky in that sense. Cool. If you hear the sound from this point, you know exactly which hatch key they're going to go to. Or you can be like, here's one of two possibilities.
And it could vary from map to map, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's
what would be interesting to add on to it is to actually not tell players how it's done on each map, so we actually have to work it out. I mean, obviously that'll propagate through the community pretty quickly, that sort of info, but it'd be interesting to make it a little bit more of a puzzle to figure out, okay, what do we have to turn on? And you always know it's going to be within, a set distance.
Right. And I think
so you're not making it too difficult.
Right. Just like any key room, it'll tell you this is the key that's necessary. Right. And I feel like if you come to an actual like a console or big old box with a bunch of buttons on it that you can interact with, it'll tell you, hey, requires hatch key, opens up hatch door, XYZ.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, I just learned a new thing.
And so maybe, I don't know if you mentioned this before, so forgive me if I miss or didn't hear you say it, but it would be interesting to have the kicking off the hatch being available, you use the key for that, but if someone else gets to the hatch before you do, they can get out using your key, right? So they could actually take advantage of you triggering the hatch, right, as well. Right. So then you might have to split your squad up and go, okay, well, we need someone to guard the hatch for that minute or so while we come back from turning it on.
Possibly.
So it could add a whole bunch of complexities.
For sure. And I think you could probably balance that out for like solos, for example. Like you can make that not be a thing for solos, because that would be really like horrible. Because if you just like from a solo player perspective to do that, and then you get there and like, well, it's already been used. Be kind of sucky, but from a squad based perspective, the way you put it, like that's actually really smart, because at that point it forces you to kind of do we leave one at the hatch and then send one person to the console, or send one person to send two people to the console and then one person to the hatch to kind of guard. But then also you have to kind of balance it out in terms of how many keys you have to use for that. But then again, you can also like maybe use like a token system. Like, oh, I'm gonna put in 3 hatch keys, so that's for 3 people.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it could be that you like you use the key as in it triggers it, but then you actually get to keep the key. So you've turned it on. Say you get back to the hatch, someone's already used it. You're like, oh, I've got to go back and turn it on again, but you don't lose the key.
I think that sounds better, honestly.
So
that's probably a better balance. Yeah, it's probably a better balance, honestly.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away the
interesting idea, though. This is I love when ideas like this come forward, because it triggers so many conversations around it. I'm sure it does for the devs as well when they hear stuff like this.
Well, I would hope so. I think it's impossible, I think, for a dev team to not think of every single possible idea, especially because we're not having to add the considerations of other things that they may be considering in terms of like having the dev time to do it, the technical considerations, all that. We're like, hey, wave a wand, make this shit happen. But that then probably leads them to unpack that, like, hey, can we actually make that happen? What tools can we use to move us in that direction? It may not look exactly the way we thought it was, but we're moving in that direction. So
yeah, and of course they're thinking of all the flow-on effects as well, because that stuff flows right through the game and will have some effect on the economy that we haven't thought about in this conversation.
Right. Speaking of which, there's a recent idea circling around recently. I think there was the Prestige one that I mentioned. I made a whole video on that one. But recently, I've seen some people talk about the idea of reducing stash size as a means of tackling
Yeah.
gear inflation, right? And I have my
Mhm.
issues with that one, right? Because it's like, it's just there's a bunch of factors there that need to be addressed. And I'm not sure if I ever asked you your opinion on this particular grab, but if you want to kind of just chime in on that.
I want to hear your thoughts on it first, and then
Okay.
I'll reflect on those.
There's a couple of issues that I think that needs to be addressed because stash restrictions typically only affect new players, right? My experience with the Cycle Frontier showed me it was in Jaeger made one of the very few good decisions that they made, because you consistently saw in feedback in Reddit and Discord and all that is that the stash was too small, right? And a lot of people kept saying, well, stash management is a skill set you need to learn, which is just, sorry, that's not one of those like, oh, it's a fun thing about the game. No, it's just, that's boring. That's a pain point that doesn't necessarily need to be there, but at the same time, you can't just give infinite stashes either. And so you can also upgrade the stash as you went along in terms of your quarters upgrades. And so what they did is they made the first upgrades more expansive, and they made the later upgrades smaller. So in the end, it was the exact same. It's just that it was way more forgiving early on, right? Because at the end of the day, these people, the newer people, were the ones having issues with the stash size, not anyone who's experienced. Anyone who had experience, they knew what to hold on to, for how long, for what amount. They already knew all that, right? So it's the newer player that's holding on to everything because they don't know what to get rid of and what's valuable, what's not, right? So a restricted stash space has a disproportionate pain point on newer players or players that maybe are still learning the game, which is by definition, it's not a newer player, but like just bad, I guess. I don't know whatever term you want to use, is people that aren't being successful at the game, whatever. So I feel like a solution like that, and I think the idea behind reducing a stash size is basically saying that you can't hoard as much. True. And I think I heard the analogy of basically saying, or the description is that a good person can't hold on to like 10 high-end purple kits, right? They can't hold on to 10 of them anymore, so they have hold on to 5 or 4 or whatever, which makes them much closer to the average player, which means they have to have fewer losses before they start bottoming out. I'm going to ask the question.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask the question, though, is that the kind of player that can hold on or gain 10 high-level kits, you think they're really going to be slowed down by this? Like, let's be real. They're gaining gears at a much higher rate than they're losing it. So you really think that's really going to deter them, right? If in the end, all that's going to happen is that this is the other issue in terms of the economy, what it devalues, because it doesn't just make everything more valuable. It makes because your space becomes a premium. So here's an example: like you go to a raid and you're super successful for whatever series of events are going to happen. Your bag is just juiced out. Right. And now at this point, even items that you normally would be jumping at the bit to pick up, they're getting left behind because that's how full your bag is. Right. So previously, items that used to be valuable to you at the beginning of a raid, let alone at the end of a raid, they might even get dropped. They're not even getting picked up. Right. Yeah. So now bring that energy to the stash now over your course of your entire gameplay experience. So at this point, I have zero incentive to pick up low level crafting gear, mid-level crafting gear. I'm literally only going to pick up things that are going to be for high level crafting gear, and that's it, because I don't have the space to have anything else. Yeah. Right. And because of Arc Raider's economy, it's crafting, it's integrated from top to bottom. Everything has a use, everything has a value, and I feel like that would completely undercut all of that. Right.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And so, and this is only presuming, by the way, I'm making the assumption, the benefit of the doubt, that it actually works for gear inflation. I'm making that assumption right now. I'm not even convinced that's going to work, but I'm making the assumption, right? Assuming that it's going to work, I feel like the pain points are going to be so disproportionate to newer players that it's not worth it, right? It's like you got to find another solution.
Right.
That's just kind of my elevator pitch of why I think it's a bad idea.
I'm glad I let you speak first, because it's actually kind of triggered a idea or a potential idea, which is that what if it wasn't just a reduced stash, but what if it was actually, if we actually think about what the problem is having players that accumulate too many good weapons. I think that's probably the real pain point, right? So a whole bunch of high tier weapons. So if they lose one, it doesn't really matter so much to them. What if the stash was structured in a way where you could only have space for 2 or 3 high tier weapons? So they actually have their own space in the stash, and that space doesn't get used until the weapon is of a certain grade. Like a gun cabinet where you keep the nicest part of it.
And then the rest is like crafting gear and things like that. Crafting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so what you're doing is you just reduce part of the stash. You reduce the high tier part of the stash, but the rest of it is pretty broad, right? So it just means that if a high tier player loses a high tier weapon, they might only have one other to fall back on, right?
Right. But here's the thing.
Whereas I was going to add, whereas a lower tier player might have 10 mid-tier weapons that they can choose from. So if they lose one, it's not such a big deal. Right. So it puts the onus on the high-tier player to continue playing well.
So at that point, the way I would go about it, because this is kind of how my mind has always worked in terms of the cycle for tier and crafting and things of that nature, right? If I have the materials to build 10 items, I have 10 of those items, right? In my mind, right? So I don't need to have them in my inventory because I can make them at will.
Yeah,
right?
I understand.
And so I think that's probably the first obstacle you have to overcome, right? For that.
Yeah, so
there's a couple of ideas that I've come up with, like for example, Albion Online. Have you ever played that before?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I have not either, but someone described to me what their anti-gear inflation system was, and it was interesting. Basically, every time a person dies with an item with an item, right? There's a probability of that item just breaking, right? And the higher the tier, the higher the probability, right? You know, I think it has some viability in this type of environment because it's not so much a cost in terms of durability, because I feel like a durability cost in terms of upkeep is just an increasing price over a longer period of time, and an increasing price doesn't deter high level players at all. It doesn't deter good players from it's just basically a tax. That's all it is. But having it completely removed, you can't buy your way out of that. And so that's an interesting. I feel like that's an interesting way of kind of possibly tackling it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've thought quite a lot about the durability side of things, whether you could just have the weapon only last for a certain length of time, so you can repair it maybe 10 times maximum, and after that time it's non-repairable.
Like reduction in max durability type thing.
Yeah. Or there's various ways that you could work around that. So either you can only repair it a certain number of times, or its durability slowly decreases over time, so you can never get it back to full durability. So that would be another way, and then it becomes less useful, right? Because if you're taking a 40% weapon into the game, by the end of the round, you might not be able to use it, right?
We've seen, because I've seen this in Delta Force and in ABI, right? And the issue it has is that it doesn't really move the needle in terms of your motivation for using the item, because either A, you lose the item anyways, which case it doesn't matter anymore, or B, you get so much value out of it. By the time it gets to that point, you've gotten so much value out of the item anymore, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of like my thing about it. It's just like the durability has to be there because you need some kind of like sync in terms of just like using the weapon a bunch of times. You need some kind of currency sync. But here's an idea that maybe I'll spitball for you here in this one, is that kind of a snowballing tax. So for example, let's say when you come into loot, this can kind of work in terms of the lore for Arc Raiders as well. And so you come back in, you come to Spira and say, hey, the elevator had to be activated by someone. They're kind of getting you into the checkpoint. Like, all right, you're still, no orcs are following you, things like that. Cool. Come time to pay the piper. Like, what you bringing, right? And they can, at that point, you have a certain like loot tax, and so depending on how much you bring in, how much you got to pay, right? And this can be directly proportional to how valuable your stash is currently, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, and you can leverage this to where it'll lean heavier on gear and leave heavier on maybe on materials that you already have a lot of, right? And so with a system like this, I feel like there can be there's some potential there, because it really only starts getting painful if you're already pretty well off and you're starting to snowball where you're getting big scores. In which case you can afford to pay it, or you need to start selling items, right?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
And so it's kind of addressing a little bit of the gear inflation portion without bringing that pain point to people who's not adding to the problem.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how like actual like economics, like, you know, that we have in the real world, a lot of those things seem to apply to this. And in the same way that I don't know how the tax system works in the States, but here in New Zealand, we have a tiered tax system. So if you earn over a certain amount, that portion that you earn is taxed at a higher rate, and it continues up until
it's the same here, generally speaking.
Right. Okay. So something like that, which obviously is used within normal economics, could actually apply to this and maybe work well.
Right, and also ways around it too. So you look at what people do to get around it, and that's going to be readily applicable here. So as soon as you brought that up, I think, okay, well, if I'm sufficiently, attuned to how this system works, I'm going to start looking at it. Okay, well, I have plenty of this. I don't need to bring that anymore, so I don't want to get taxed so hard on it.
Yeah, right.
And so you kind of effectively reducing your tax bracket essentially when you're coming in, right? But that's kind of does the job for you, because like, hey, if I have like 20 voltage converters, come stacking those up for like heavy armor or whatever it is that they're valuable for building it whenever the new build comes out. If I have 20 of them already, I don't need more, right? But I'm always going to bring them because they're always going to be valuable. But if I'm learning, hey, you know what? Every time I bring one of those suckers back, I'm getting charged X, Y, Z out the backside. At this point, it's not no longer worth it to bring it anymore. Which means I don't start stacking them up anymore. I leave them on the map.
Yeah.
Right. And so me getting around that is incentivizing doing the very thing that the game wants me to do anyways. So
yeah, right. And it's not too painful, right? Because I know I can bring this up. I sort of spitballed an idea to you that I haven't actually presented on a video, which was the idea of having quests where you had to take gear back into the game and deliver it somewhere as a way to reduce the amount that you had in your stash.
Right.
And you were saying to me that it just sounds like it's not fun. And I agree. I don't think it sounds fun, but what you've just described, I think it would go under the radar for players, and they'd just view it as like, oh well, it's just how the game works. I kind of, I have to pay my way. So I think it could work.
And it's really hard too. It's some of those things where, like, because I overthink this stuff, I think of it logically when you go, okay, if I'm a player that can consistently evac at like 80% or higher, what am I going to do with the resources that I have to get around XYZ measure? To no longer have it apply to me, no longer have it be a pain point to me. And if that's exploitable, it's one of those cases where, like, cool, if I have the means to get around it, I'm going to do it, but it still applies to everybody else. That's not a good system, right? And in this,
but it's a system that can be. I was going to say, it's a system that can be changed, right? Just like economies have, each year there's a little tax variation or whatever to try and prevent those things from happening.
But I think if it's in the case of, if it's giving you the incentive to do the action that the game wants you to anyways, let them do it. Let them get around it. It's like, if they're leaving things, because if they're leaving things of value on the map because they keep getting taxed more and more and more, it's doing the job, right? And if they choose that, hey, I'm gonna bring them out anyways, tax or no tax, because I value this on that much higher. Cool. You're gonna reduce your in-game currency significantly faster, which means you're gonna have less ability to do it with it, whatever else you want to do with it. And so there's going to be a pain point at some point, right? And that's the nature of extraction shooters regardless. But it's aiming it towards the people who need to have it aimed at them, right? Because like an average gamer who's like evacing maybe, I don't know, 50% of the time or less or something like that, and they're kind of barely making it through, they're kind of barely able to kind of do that, they're not going to feel this at all, right? And so, like, for example, they can come back with the exact same haul as the high-level player who has a full stack, who will have a full stash, and they won't get taxed nearly as hard, right? And so I feel like that's a good system in the sense that, cool, they get a taste of it, they get it, right? But if they continue to have that kind of level of success, right, it's going to start to make them want to be more precise in how they go about it at that point. Okay, let me start looting things that I don't necessarily have a lot of,
Yeah. And when you say it, like the way you describe it, it sounds so natural, right? And it makes you realize how crazy a wipe system is, like a full wipe. It goes against anything economics wise completely, right?
Well, I mean, it's not crazy because you have the ability to do it. You can just do it, right? That's the
Well,
Fight Club,
it,
yeah, like
it,
reset everybody goes to
it,
zero.
it works, but as
At what
far as
cost?
like, yeah, exactly. So
Right,
yeah, I think an economics based solution to me, at face value, sounds pretty good.
right. And I think I mentioned that like a long time ago with the cycle, and when I pointed out them not going to wipes, because under season 3 they went to no wipes, which was their last season. It had nothing to do with their wipes, but just basically that's just coincidental. I kind of
Mhm.
pointed out that this is an economic problem, right? In search
Yeah,
of an answer,
yeah,
and until someone finds that answer, we're gonna be stuck with wipes. And
yeah,
it wipes is a simple answer. It's just to hit a reset button every so often. You can even plan content around it. It is such an easy thing to do, right? However, it borders on lazy in my opinion, right? I feel like there's because we just discussed a bunch of things that people can do to try to hit that lever. To just fall back on wipes feels like I
yeah,
don't know, man. I feel like given the level of expertise that Embark is full of, just to use one company as an example, I find it hard to believe that someone out there hasn't thought of ideas similar to these or just as good or even better to try to solve the situation instead of just going, let's just put a wipe in it.
yeah. I think well, one of it is trying something new is going to come with a risk, right?
Yeah.
And especially around the stash economics, because if you get it wrong, everyone
Yeah.
will hate it, right?
Right. Well, everyone's
And
gonna hate it anyways. Everyone online that has a keyboard, they're gonna hate it, but people are gonna still play the game anyways. They're gonna have fun. So
yeah, yeah. I think there's plenty of potential here. I think if they think this way, and I'm sure with the amount of experience amongst the Embark team, they're going to come up with a solution. And I'm really hoping we look at it and go, this is really, really good and
right.
innovative, and it feels good and it feels natural and doesn't
Mhm.
feel like you're just having everything taken off you every now and then.
Right. And I hope so. Like that's literally been my concern since day one. I remember when I wrote my 2 page long feedback email to them after I played it for the first time in 2023. At least a quarter of that was basically concerns about the end game and bringing what I saw
Yeah,
from the cycle to going, hey, I don't want this to be your problem. Right.
yeah,
So this needs to
yeah,
get nailed down way early in the process so you can kind of like build around it and kind of like have it built in. And I think a lot of times, and I've had questions on certain comments about, hey, why does an end game need to be a thing? Why can't you just do this or that? On a long enough timeline, everyone will play the end game longer than they play the regular game. So you're going to be playing
yeah.
the end game more than the rest of the game combined. That needs to
Hmm.
get nailed down, right? And that's kind of like what I came to the conclusion of the clan system that I put together, and it's just kind of like that felt to me was like tailor made to address the issue in terms of like these are the higher level guys who are itching to beat the snot out of each other constantly and use high level gear doing it. Give them the ability to do that and just piss that gear away into the wind. Give them the
Yeah,
ability to do that, right? And then do it separately from everybody else, so it's not like everyone else is gonna get caught in the crossfire, And that's the issue
yeah,
that came
yeah,
across all the time in the Cycle Frontier. People were just like, all right, these high level players, these high level streamers, or whatever it is, jump in and start pushing gunshots instantly, just boom. And I felt
yeah.
like that the clan system that I put together was like tailor made to not only just siphon gear out from the regular lobbies, but also give these very enthusiastic portions of your community an outlet to
Uh-huh,
ex-
uh-huh.
to just experience that passion and also like share it too, because they're like, hey, I want more people with me in my drops. Y'all should come and join our clan. Y'all should do this. Hey, new guy who's struggling right now, let me show you how not to struggle so much. Join our clan. And like I see that as a benefit, as a social benefit. And to me, when I'm thinking about that, it makes me wonder why clans have just kind of as a feature have kind of declined in shooters over the years. And I was like,
Mm.
there's so much social
I
and
think
economic benefit for the developer.
yeah, yeah. For the rest of the developer, I think for some players, like they just want to jump in with two of their mates, and they're not interested in that extra social part.
Sure.
Like for them, the game is just playing with their two buddies, and that's how they want to keep it. So I think you have to be careful not to sort of tread on the toes of those players in the process.
Well, it's also kind of why I build it in there, in the sense that there's like balancing systems put in place to encourage recruitment, but also not give them so many advantages that it makes the smaller clans less viable. And so your clan can literally just be you and your two buddies, right? And you're gonna get all the benefits of that. And because the balancing mechanics are as such
Okay.
that so
Gotcha. I
you
see.
have the benefits. And there's even I think there should be, this part is probably less thought out a little bit more, but it's just as important. Is that like a kind of a contractor style clan, which is just literally a one person clan, because maybe people don't want to be involved in that, but it allows them to, I don't know, go to contract boards and like still participate and be cool. I want to be a mercenary. I want to go and do this, do that, and you can even go into a temporary alliance with, you know, a bunch of other solo contractors. Like, cool, I want to go do X, Y, Z, and so you can kind of jump into it at your leisure and not be penalized for not doing it. And so, whereas the reason why I think that's an important aspect to it, but I think also letting very social groups organize this way, I think it's a net benefit, because inherently you're going to kind of like go within their sphere, kind of like gravity. Eventually you're going to come in contact with one of these social groups, and they're going to be good in the way they approach you, in the sense that like, hey, if you're interested in wanting to do XYZ content, you can roll with us, right? And that person who maybe has a 4 to 6 month lifespan with the game turns into a year or year and a half, 2 year lifespan with the game. In my time working with wargaming, we had numbers that suggested the average lifespan for a player playing the game was 6 months, and playing with clans increased this time significantly more. And I have this was like over a decade ago, mind you, so like I have a hard time believing that number hasn't stayed the same, if not gotten better over time.
Interesting. So I got a question now, and this might actually segue us nicely into sort of the other part of the podcast that we chatted about, which is that, okay, there's all these possibilities for how gear inflation can be dealt with, right? Whatever the answer is, and we don't know until Embark tell us. Should Embark tell us before the game releases, or should they just let us find out how it works once the game's launched?
Well, I mean, there's pros and cons for both. I think the obvious one would be if they start outlining it out beforehand, it's going to give people plenty of time to nitpick every single aspect that they see, and that's not necessarily a good thing. I always kind of bring up Apex Legends as a excellent example of just dropping it on your lap and going, here, we'll play the game. Granted, it was free, so you know, take that with a grain of salt. And so I feel like finding out about it as you're playing the game has its benefits, in the sense that people have less chance to plan around it, which means it will get optimized later. Which is also necessarily a good thing, because you can't see how people are optimizing it beyond the point where you may not have wanted them to. And
it can't become the sole focus, right? So, you know, if it's presented as a Discord post by Dusty or something like that, people are just going to solely focus on that for a week or two or whatever it is, right? And if it's a negative sentiment, then that's all that'll be presented. But if they're playing the game and enjoying it, and there's just one aspect, they're like, this wipe system or whatever it is doesn't work as well as I'd like. Yeah, but they're like, oh, well, I'm still enjoying it. You just need to make some changes to it.
Yeah, I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Basically, it's like, hey, I'm gonna play the game right now. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. And
so whatever it is, if it's going to be innovative, they probably shouldn't tell us beforehand, I think.
Yeah, I mean, at the end as well, because I highly doubt they've come up with something that has some glaring flaw that the community will pick up on off of a Discord post, which is unfortunate that we can see that's the probability of how they're going to go about telling us, because they probably wouldn't tell us in a trailer. Because they have a bad history when it comes to delivering news via trailers. So they're probably going to be gun shy about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I don't know if I call it a bad history. I think
let's call it a colorful record.
Yeah.
Right. Colorful record, and it's probably going to be more like that color right there.
I mean, we've got 2 posts within a week, right?
Yep.
Which is a change in cadence from what they had previously, which was monthly. So we've seen a change. We've got an update about the rated den, which is cool. You're going to be able to, you know, fit out your rated den with your things you found topside, which is
Right.
a nice little innovation, I think.
For sure. I think
And
I could be. Sorry, go ahead.
and then I was just going to say, and then we've got that official art of concept art, which is
Hmm.
clearly goes back some time. So they're sort of giving us
Right.
a bit of a history of the game's development
For sure.
through that as well.
All right. And so yeah, which post did you want to go tackle first?
I think the concept art, actually. I mean, it's the most recent one.
Mhm.
I think most people have had the chance to see the raid den, and we all get it. I don't think there's too much controversial around that. I
Depends.
don't think the art's necessarily controversial, but the fact they've given it to us is curious.
It
Would be
is.
the
I think
best way to describe it.
and I think you did a great job of illustrating as to uh, why I should feel a certain way about it, because my initial reaction to it was that's it, right? It was more of cases like when we talked about earlier in terms of like I feel like we're beyond concept art, right, in terms of announcements at this point, because if this was announced 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 6 months ago, even, um, we would have these tidbits and these crumbs to really, maybe not 6 months ago because we had the in-game in-game footage trailer to go off of, and so
Hmm.
if this was given a twist before that, then I feel like that's great, allure in terms of what we can expect from the game. But as is right now, we can go to YouTube and scour all of that and see tens of thousands of hours of in-game footage of the glory that is this game. I mean, people having fun with the graphics, the gunplay, the proxy chat. I mean, it just the game oozes excellence, right? So there's no shortage of
Hmm.
that. So I feel like giving us like 4 snippets of like concept art is just really just I think we're kind of beyond that. However, you did point out the fact that this is the second update in a week, so it's not exactly like it's the only update. And I feel like
Hmm.
it's like an additional. It's kind of like a side meal, like a dessert type thing. It's like, hey, it's a cupcake, you know. And so I
It's,
wouldn't
it's,
really look at it as a major announcement and to be like, this is all I'm getting. No, it's not all I'm getting. It's a cupcake. It's not the side. No one's gonna say, oh man, it's a cupcake.
yeah.
They're gonna be like, give me that cupcake. Done.
And it's funny you say that because I was just about to say I've got an analogy for this, and
Yeah.
that the cupcake one works perfectly for it. So my analogy is that the release date trailer was a meal that made a lot of people sick, right? And the comeback from that for the Embark restaurant is that they're just coming out and giving us a few little hors d'oeuvres. Here's a cracker with a
Mm-hmm.
shrimp on it. Eat that. How do you feel about that? Oh no, my stomach's fine now. I feel a bit better. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. Okay. No, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still feeling good. And then I feel like the real meal is about to come. So I think we're
Right.
being drip fed a little bit of information just to test the waters,
For sure.
and I think that's what they're using these for, rather than this is going to be their marketing process of just
Right.
posting little bits and pieces all the way through.
Right. It does feel sometimes it does feel a little bit like lip service when it comes to that kind of stuff though. But because we're getting them increased frequency, it feels a little bit better. I feel like if that was given to us as the only thing in the last month,
Yeah.
it would feel really lacking,
Yeah.
right? It really
Yeah.
really would.
Yeah. Yep. I think that's fair.
And I have to approach it from this perspective because like it's my knee jerk reaction, and man, I'd always be the most accurate way of looking at it. But I know other people are going to be thinking that as well, and so I kind of have to like maybe at least ask that question for the people who are listening who
Yeah.
may have the same reaction, right?
Yeah.
And with regards to the Raider, what do they call the quarters? Is what they're called?
Quarters. I think they call it the Raider Den.
The Raider Den. See, they called it the
Yeah,
quarters
you've got
in
the workshop and the Raider Den.
right, Raider Den, and depending on how that works, because the way I interpret it as basically, you're gonna have your most expensive items on display, and then you had you had a couple other things kind of to show off,
Yeah,
and
your top tier weapons on the wall, and then I think probably things you found like in the image I'm looking at where the Raider's bouncing the ball against the wall. There's a couple of like pet cushions on the floor, which I
mhm,
think you could find in game. I imagine it's stuff like that, like the
right,
statues and Lance's mixtape, those kind of things that'll be
right.
scattered around the shelves.
I mean, it's a really really interesting trophy room. That's basically what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Um, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But again, I think because of that, meal that made you sick in those little hors d'oeuvres, you're kind of like, hey, here's a cracker with the shrimp on it. I'm like, this shrimp's not even seasoned, man. Like, It's really and it's really easy to kind of fall into that, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I almost feel like, would people want nothing instead? And it's one of those things where that's one reaction, and then other people are super juiced about it, and they're like going off into the deep end. They're like, "Oh, confirm social, hub, blah blah blah. This is more likely to happen." I'm like, brother, come on, calm down, man. It's a sub menu.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you look at it from Embark's point of view, maybe they have to have the opportunity to kind of figure out a way to read the room. And so this is a chance for them to do it by having a couple
For
of
sure.
pretty lightweight posts.
Right.
And they can just go, what's the community like right now? Okay.
Right.
Is something good. They want more. Let's actually give them,
Right.
the start of the marketing campaign.
For sure. I think players won't ever have enough, honestly. Like, just, it doesn't matter. I think, but it also comes down to just, hey, we put it out there. Is it a positive reaction? Is it not? And it's, if it is, then great. We can go make more posts like this. And so to me, the most impactful Discord announcement they've made so far has been the one where we kind of inadvertently found out there's a grenade launcher in the game. And so,
sorry, I just missed what you said then. When we found out,
the biggest impact, the most impactful Discord message that we ever got from them since Summer Games Fest was the one where they were showing like the aerosol cannon with the flamethrower, as well as the
the grenade launcher
and the grenade launcher. Like,
right.
You're giving us something with teeth. You're giving us something with meat on it, right? Now it feels like we're getting chicken bones at this point.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, I think that's a fair summary. I feel like the next post needs to be something juicy. Whatever comes next, we need something with a bit more grit to it. So,
well, by then we'll be in September, which is going to be, pretty.
Yeah.
That's the next one after that. It's gonna be October. Now I understand it's gonna be at the end of October, but it's the same. Hey, we're getting there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And to me,
so
like I said,
hopefully,
nothing's ever gonna be as good as playing the game anyway. So it's just one of those things where, like, give me a pre-order, give me throw my money at it, give me in the game. At this point, like, wake me up when September ends, right?
Yeah, and I think now's the time to really give us something substantial. There's not too much going on. I mean, Battlefield's starting to ramp up its marketing, but I think they could put something out now and get eyeballs on it for sure.
For sure. I think they can do that. But yeah, and so those announcements, to me, I feel like it's in my detriment to be as plugged in as I am, as plugged as we are, right? When we see it, and we can kind of miss the forest for the trees. Whereas, and it also makes me ask the question: is like, who's this for? It's for the choir, clearly. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so,
like when you've got people like us that are queuing up at the gate from 6 a.m. for the gig, right? It's easy to view it completely differently from the person that turns up 5 minutes before it starts.
Right. And at the end of the day, I don't think the choir needs convincing anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think maybe my opinion is unpopular in the sense that they could literally not made any of these announcements. It would have made no difference to me, because I would like, cool, October 30th come along. All right, let's do it. And but the question I think they made the question I'm dancing around is basically is, who is following these Discord announcements that is excited for them that wouldn't be without them?
That's a really good question. You'd have to say it's people that are one step back from us, I think. So they're watching what's going on with the game, and all they really want to know is that there's just something happening, and it doesn't really matter what it is. They just want to know that things that that there is something being put out, as opposed to people that are ignoring it completely until it's launched, and opposed to us that watch every little micro step, right?
Right.
So,
right,
that's the people it's for, I think. Yeah.
Right, and that's probably me. If I were a fly in the room or somebody in the room when someone's making the decisions when it comes to like these communications, I'd be asking that question. I'd be like, maybe it's just it's one of those things where it doesn't require a lot of energy from them, and doesn't require like someone playing that out too hard, right? So it doesn't. There's not a lot of cost to it, and so it's like whatever cost you're going into it, is it going to be sustaining? Is it going to be worth it? I can't imagine they would be, honestly, because it's it's like, here's some pictures, open up the art section, plan that out. And then same thing for the Raider hatch. Cool, we have this thing in game. We have something physical to show them. Cool, make a GIF, Here's some cool stuff. Write some fluff to it, right? Boom. It's not that hard, right? Not to diminish it, right? It's just one of those cases where it's like that's kind of the objective. You don't have to spend a lot of energy on it, and you can still get some feedback off of it.
So I think the next one, whatever's next, is going to be really telling, because if it's another lightweight snippet, potentially that says to us we should expect these lightweight snippets for some time, and that we might not actually get a full-scale marketing campaign until, who knows, 2 or 3 weeks before launch, right?
Right, or it's not until the weekend of and the week afterwards, because like you mentioned before, like, you know, I think a free trial is going to be just as impactful as like an open beta, for example, because it's like you can do it. Like if it were me, I'd do it a week later or 2 weeks after launch. You've ironed out all the significant, you know, launching pains. You've allowed people who are the diehards to buy into it. You've allowed them to do their missionary work and bring in more people in, and then the true skeptics at that point will have the opportunity to play for free 2 weeks later, and then at that point they can buy it. And
the question is, can there really be that many of them? Because I don't know what peak player count was, and you've got to try and do a bit of a calculation with this. But let's say it was, I think on SteamDB it was like 25,000, something like that.
Right.
Right.
That was a closed
and then,
beta.
But based on what we've learnt from the finals previously, you can give it a multiplier of somewhere between like maybe 5 to 15 times is the actual number of players that got to experience the game. So somewhere between maybe 100,000 and 300,000 at a guess, right, is the actual number of players that got the opportunity to experience the Tech Test 2.
Yeah.
So with that many people and the game being of high quality, because we know it is, how many more people does Embark actually need to convince to buy the game? I mean, maybe they've already gone, actually, we're going to be fine.
Right.
We just need to do our marketing campaign to reignite things just before launch.
You might have a point there. I think it's one of those cases where, because we talked about this last episode, where there's going to be a lot of people who just simply they're gun shy when it comes to spending the money on a game they haven't had a chance to play yet. And so there's always going to be those skeptics. And I think it's harder for you to convince your friends to play when there's a price tag associated with it. And so you have the perfect excuse, especially if they announce it ahead of time, right? I think if they announce it ahead of time, maybe it'll I don't think, well, actually take that back. Because if they announce it ahead of time, you have a lot more people who are on the fence, less likely to buy it. They'll just wait for the free weekend to make sure. So you want them to spend the money. That's what, point blank, you want them to spend the money, right? And once you've got the people who are there and you got the converts, like, hey, this is something. You guys need to try this out. You guys need to try this out. You guys need to try it out. And then suddenly, hey, it's free now. You need to try this out now. And I feel like they'll have like a ramp up, because then those people will try it. And then within the first, if it's like a weekend, maybe it can be like a long weekend, it'd be like 3-4 days, and they try it day 1, day 2, they're like, I'm going to talk to my other buddies who have not played this yet, and I need to convert them while the getting's good, while it's still free, right? And I feel like they'll have like a ramping effect. And
it's an interesting question to kind of figure out, okay, well, do they actually need to play it? Or if they're watching streamer after streamer and content creator after content creator and their friends all saying, this game is amazing, you need to get it, do they actually need to play it to be convinced that they should?
You're thinking logically, man. Now let me expect the gamers to be doing that. Let me bring in common sense into a perfectly good conversation.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
Right. So I think we've probably run the gambit here at this point, and I have to end my particular portion. I'll let you sign us out here in a second. I want to thank you for showing up again, being part of this podcast. Like, just basically almost every single episode, dude. You've been an absolute joy to work with. We need to get on stream soon, because I have an awful admission to make. Yesterday, I was playing the finals. And I played light, and I liked it. That makes me a horrible person, I think. But here's my in my defense.
And you're telling this to a heavy main, so
right. Here's my defense. I brought the healer gun, right, and I kept my heavy alive. I was keeping my heavy alive.
There you go.
Right, and I brought sonar grenades, and I brought the portal grenade thing. So I brought pure utility as a light. You know, I didn't bring no swords. I brought like I did the ARN for like long range. So it was not a I'm gonna be, you know, Killer McGee up in here. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna be a utility, you know, light, and I'm gonna help my buddies doing this. Right.
It shows you how context makes the world a difference, and I guess that's what this podcast is about in some ways. We put what's going on with Arc Raiders into context for people, right?
For sure. And I certainly, you know, I'm happy that we're able to do this, and I'm also happy for the response that people are finding it's extremely useful. And so I'm hoping once the game does come out that we're still doing this, but now we're able to talk about other things and kind of probably have like clips of the week type things. It's kind of like just being centered around this bonfire that is Arc Raiders, of just kind of enjoying the heat from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. And thanks for having me through these episodes. It's, you know, and we'll continue to do so. It's been a pleasure, and I love talking about the game, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there watching that really enjoy listening to our thoughts about it and coming up with their own thoughts around it too.
Absolutely, man.
And I just wanted to add for people that follow my YouTube channel and so on, apologies that I haven't had any videos out, but the last 10 days I've had some major IT issues and have had to make quite a few changes to my PC, but I'm back on course now. So this week, hopefully, we'll have something out.
For those of you who don't understand the New Zealand accent, he's saying he hates you all and doesn't want to put any more content out. That's what he said, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that could be well what I said in Kiwi.
That's what he said in Kiwi right there, man. All right, guys. I want to thank everyone for listening for this point. Links are in the description, Discord, socials, all that stuff down there. Leave a comment, you know, ask questions, do all that fun stuff. And Rockhound, I'll go ahead and let you send us out.
And everyone enjoy the rest of their day. And kia kaha. Stay strong.